It was good for me. I needed it. I guess out of everyone in my family, I never had that moment to cry about his death.
On June 25th, 2009, the world was told Michael Jackson's heart had stopped. But to his sister Janet, the story never added up. Behind the flashing cameras and global mourning lay whispers of betrayal, power, and a death too convenient to be coincidence. Years later, Janet Jackson would break her silence, suggesting her brother's passing was not fate, but design. Her chilling revelations force us to revisit the shadows surrounding the King of Pop and ask, was Michael's death planned? And how did Janet come to this conclusion? Join us as Janet Jackson reveals why Michael Jackson's death was planned. Janet Jackson reveals why Michael Jackson's death was planned. Michael Jackson's story remains a subject of fascination long after his untimely passing. For some, whispers of him being alive are fueled not by truth, but by an unwillingness to let go of a star that once shone the brightest. A star who changed the face of music with his electrifying performances and soul-touching lyrics. Yet beneath the glitter and spectacle lies a darker, more complex narrative, one that Janet Jackson believes was never an accident. Janet has always been a quiet pillar in the Jackson family, the sister who both adored and understood Michael in a way few others could. After her brother's sudden death, she confessed that she hadn't watched television since. She tuned out the chaotic media circus, blocking herself from the endless blame games and speculative headlines. Her memories of Michael in those final weeks are bittersweet. On May 14th, just 2 days before her own birthday, they celebrated together with family. Thai food, laughter, siblings teasing one another, the kind of intimate joy the public never got to see. "We had so much fun that day," Janet recalled, her soft voice barely audible. "We kept calling each other after and saying how great it was." That memory became one of the last living snapshots of Michael Jackson. When the call came on June 25th, 2009, Janet was on set filming Why Did I Get Married To in Atlanta. The shock sent her spiraling back to Los Angeles into a private grief that unfolded under the glare of a ravenous public. At the memorial service, Paris Jackson's trembling voice broke hearts across the globe as she clung to her Aunt Janet for strength. "I was really proud," Janet remembered. "People said to me that Michael's daughter speaking gave them a sense of how he was as a father." For Janet, the children's strength became the only comfort in a storm of suspicion and sorrow. But grief soon gave way to conviction. By November of that year, Janet Jackson broke her silence in an interview that electrified the world. She placed the spotlight firmly on Dr. Conrad Murray, the physician tasked with Michael's care. "He was the one administering," Janet said with quiet firmness. "I think he is responsible." She stopped short of calling Murray names, but her words carried an undertone that many could not ignore. For Janet, Murray was no more than a pawn in a much larger game. The suggestion was chilling. Michael Jackson's death was not merely the result of one doctor's negligence, but a carefully orchestrated event by forces with far more power than Conrad Murray could ever wield. To Janet, her brother had been living under siege, targeted by an industry that thrived on his genius while resenting his independence. Michael owned publishing rights worth hundreds of millions, including the lucrative Beatles catalog, a treasure trove that made him both indispensable and dangerous. Janet's belief taps into a wider narrative that Michael himself had hinted at during his lifetime. He often spoke about betrayal, manipulation, and unseen hands trying to destroy him. He accused record executives of corruption and expressed fear that he was being hunted. Why would Janet believe his death was planned? Because she had watched the pattern unfold. The endless lawsuits, the controversies that seemed too convenient, the pressure that grew heavier with every passing year. Michael had enemies not just in tabloids, but in boardrooms, where decisions about power and profit often outweighed human life. Janet's words, then, were not the bitter musings of a grieving sister. They were an indictment. She implied that Michael Jackson's passing was not a tragedy of chance, but the outcome of a system designed to silence him at the height of his influence. A king stripped of his crown, not by fate, but by design. Michael Jackson's story is not only one of genius and fame, it is also a cautionary tale about power, exploitation, and the price of being too great in a world that fears greatness. But how did the other Jacksons react to losing their famous brother? Let's delve into that. Michael Jackson's family stance on his death. When Michael Jackson passed away, shock reverberated across the world. For fans, it was an unthinkable tragedy. For his family, it was a wound that went far deeper than the glossy headlines could capture. But beyond grief, one striking commonality quickly emerged in the Jackson clan's response: suspicion. Few within the family accepted the official story at face value, just like Janet Jackson. LaToya Jackson was among the first to speak out, her voice tinged with both anger and certainty. She declared that her brother's life had been taken, insisting he was surrounded by the wrong people. For her, Michael's death was not about a tragic mistake or a careless doctor. It was the outcome of a calculated plan. LaToya Jackson revealed that her brother's life was cruelly taken because he was worth so much more dead than alive. Her words were controversial, but they echoed the unease that many fans felt in their gut. Asked whether she believed the star's life was taken, she added, "I never had a doubt." Joe Jackson, the patriarch, had his own interpretation. Known for his unyielding persona, Joe was quick to shift the blame outward. He spoke openly about external forces, claiming Michael had been the target of manipulation. For Joe, his son's death was not a matter of bad luck. It was evidence of exploitation by individuals who wanted control of the king of pop's career, catalog, and money. Even in mourning, his tone was defiant, framing Michael's passing as the culmination of a long history of betrayal. Jermaine Jackson, always protective of his brother, took a more diplomatic but equally suspicious stance. In interviews, he emphasized that Michael had lived under constant scrutiny and mistrust, and that betrayal often came from those closest to him. Jermaine Jackson believed that converting to Islam might have saved his life. He felt that if Michael had embraced Islam, he would still be alive today. Jermaine revealed that life has been tough for the family since his brother's passing, and they would never get over it. And there were no words to describe the feeling. They were just learning to live with it. The family did not always speak with one voice. Each member had their own interpretation of what happened. Yet, whether it was LaToya's bold accusations, Joe's fiery warnings, or Jermaine's layered suspicions, they all converged on a single theme. Michael's death was not a simple tragedy. It was, in their view, the outcome of external pressure, manipulation, and betrayal. Even in their divisions, the Jackson family carried the same haunting undertone. Michael had been taken, not lost. While the family's older members raised their suspicions publicly, it was Michael's daughter, Paris, who gave the world a deeply personal glimpse into her father's state of mind before his death. In interviews years later, Paris painted a picture not of a carefree superstar, but of a man plagued by fear. In her first in-depth interview, Paris told Rolling Stone she was convinced Jackson's death was a setup. Paris Jackson believed there was more to her father Michael's death than the official account. He would often drop hints about people being out to get him, and at some point, he felt they would take his life one day. When asked by the interviewer if she thought her father's life was taken, Paris replied that she absolutely did. She believed it was obvious, with all signs pointing to it, and that it seemed like a setup. Paris stated that many people wanted her father dead and implied she was working to bring them to justice, likening it to a chess game, though she didn't name specific individuals or implicate anyone. For Paris, losing her father was compounded by the memory of those fears. His death confirmed the shadows he had long spoken of, leaving her with the painful thought that he might have been right all along. She struggled openly with grief, admitting to bouts of depression and a feeling of being unmoored in the years after his passing. For the world, Michael Jackson was an icon. For Paris, he was Daddy, a man who loved, protected, but also feared the forces closing in on him. So how did the rest of the world react to his death? And what further controversies has the incident been wrapped in? Let's delve into that. Michael Jackson's death and the controversy surrounding it. On June 25, 2009, the world stopped. What began as an ordinary summer day turned into one of the most unforgettable moments in modern pop culture history. News broke that Michael Jackson, the king of pop, had been rushed to the hospital in Los Angeles. At first, the reports were fragmented. Rumors of cardiac arrest, whispers of collapse, and frantic updates from sources close to the singer. But as the hours stretched into the afternoon, the unthinkable was confirmed. Michael Jackson was gone at the age of 50. The initial reaction was disbelief. How could Michael Jackson, the man who moonwalked across the stage at Motown 25, who filled stadiums with his electrifying presence, who redefined music videos with Thriller, suddenly no longer be alive? Outside the UCLA Medical Center, hundreds of fans gathered almost instantly, many in tears, holding signs, blasting his music from speakers, and refusing to accept what they were hearing. Around the globe, similar scenes unfolded. The grief was overwhelming, but so too was the hunger for answers. As news networks shifted into 24/7 coverage, every detail of Michael's life, health, and final hours was dissected in real time. Helicopter footage showed the ambulance carrying his body. Pundits speculated endlessly about his fragile health and his grueling preparations for the upcoming This Is It tour. Tabloids splashed his name across every front page, while fans flooded the internet with tributes, memories, and raw emotion. In death, Michael Jackson's influence was reaffirmed. Within hours, his albums soared back to the top of charts around the world. Online music stores crashed as millions of fans scrambled to download his catalog. Makeshift tribute concerts appeared in city squares where strangers gathered to sing Billie Jean, Man in the Mirror, and Heal the World in unison. The grief was collective, a rare moment when humanity seemed to pause and mourn together. Yet alongside the mourning came suspicion. Michael's death, to many, didn't feel like a tragic accident. He had been rehearsing for his biggest comeback tour in years. He appeared energetic in leaked rehearsal footage just days before. For fans and family alike, the idea that his life could end so suddenly seemed almost too abrupt. Whispers of foul play began to mix with the tears, creating a dual reaction, sorrow and doubt. At the center of the storm stood Dr. Conrad Murray, Michael's personal physician. Investigators revealed that Murray had administered a powerful anesthetic, propofol, to help Michael sleep, a substance usually reserved for surgical settings, never for home use. Murray admitted to giving the substance in Michael's bedroom on the night of his death, sparking outrage and confusion. How could one of the world's most celebrated performers be treated with such recklessness? The legal battle that followed only deepened the controversy. Murray was charged with involuntary manslaughter in 2010. During the trial, prosecutors painted a picture of a doctor who acted negligently, prioritizing his paycheck over his patient's safety. Defense attorneys, however, argued that Michael had demanded the substance and that his dependency was beyond Murray's control. In 2011, Murray was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in prison, though he served less than 2. For the public, the verdict brought little closure. Some felt Murray had been rightly punished. Others believed he was merely a scapegoat for much larger forces at play. Could one doctor alone bear the responsibility for a superstar's death, especially a superstar who had been under pressure from promoters, managers, and an industry eager to capitalize on his final tour? Medical experts raised further questions. Why was propofol even allowed in Jackson's home? Who else knew about its use? Was Michael's desperate insomnia being exploited by those who stood to gain financially from his performances? The more details emerged, the more unsettling the story became. And so, the controversy endures. Even years later, fans, family members, and conspiracy theorists question the official account. To some, Murray's negligence was the tragic but simple truth. To others, his conviction was just the surface of a much deeper orchestrated plan to silence an artist who had grown too powerful, too independent, and too inconvenient. Regardless, Michael's life has been under pressure right from the start. So, let's delve into where it all started from. Michael Jackson's early life and industry pressures. Michael Jackson's story did not begin in the glitter of stardom, but in a cramped house in Gary, Indiana, where music became both escape and burden. As the youngest member of the Jackson 5, Michael was thrust into the spotlight before he even learned the full meaning of childhood. His voice was a revelation, piercing, soulful, carrying the weight of generations. The audience saw a prodigy. Behind the curtain, however, the cost was steep. By the early 2000s, Michael was more recluse than rock star, his brilliance overshadowed by eccentricities and scandals. Yet, through it all, he remained an enigma, a man of unparalleled talent caught in a relentless storm of fame, fear, and betrayal. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also check out another interesting video by clicking on the video shown on your screen. See you on the other side.